Why do I believe in Islam over Christianity? You know, I think in America, I would like Islam to be represented as just a sect of Christianity, actually. There's so many sects of Christianity here, Mormonism, all this. Islam may as well just be a sect of Christianity in America. Like, that's how it should be branded, in my opinion. Because you need to level with people's understanding and where they're at. It's according to them, that's what it would be. You could say, oh, well, it's not that. And it's like, well, how are you going to teach Islam to non-Muslims in America? You're not going to do it by telling them that this religion has no continuity with your religion at all. And that's not true. Islam conceives itself as in continuity with Christianity. So I also feel like a big mistake that Islam made historically is that it underappreciated the historical role of Christianity, which had not been fully exhausted. I do believe Islam is the last religion, but I think Islam historically was too quick to assume that the world historical role of Christianity was finished, which it wasn't. And that's very important to always bear in mind. Like, Christianity is not done with having relevance in the world, even if Islam is the last religion, which it is, in my opinion, or according to my faith. But I think I'll tell you why I believe in Islam over Christianity on a personal level, if I'm allowed to do that. I try not to talk about these kinds of topics because I don't want to be divisive. I don't want to be sectarian. HDG, thank you so much. And I don't want to give the impression, I don't want to weaponize my authority as a thought leader and as a guide to you to assert the dominance of one religion or the other. So if you respect me and you listen to the things that I say, I don't want that position I have to be weaponized in a way where, like, I pressure you to abandon your religion and adopt mine. So full discretion, I could be wrong. There's a lot of things I think Islam is lacking when it comes to Christianity that I see. I'm not that educated, all right? I'm not a god. I'm not like a prophet. I'm not somebody you should learn your religion from. But I'll just tell you my perspective personally, and that's it, right? Not saying this is the absolute truth. I'm just saying this is how I see it. The reason is because, to me, I really like this idea in Islam of the seal of the prophets. I like this idea that the message has to be completed before the end times. The message must be completed. The word must be completed, totally completed before the end times, in the form of this book, in the form of this symptom of meaning, the Holy Quran, right? Which I think that renders concrete the entire story of the great religions through the book. And people think that's the text, that's the dead letter, and it's not. The Quran is a work of poetry. It's a work of it's not like a direct statement of fact. It's not a direct enunciation of the law. Its meaning is conveyed indirectly through the miracle of language and the signifier. And that the focus on the symbolic order that's called in Lacan, his psychoanalysis, symbolic order, the signifier, and the return and redemption of the signifier, or the rebirth of the signifier, I should rather put it, after the kind of, what do you call it? The split that was introduced by Christianity between the dead letter and the kind of phenomenal beauty, right? And I think Islam reconciles Jesus' message in a more final way than Christianity does. And that's kind of why I consider myself a Muslim and not a Christian. I think Islam is more complete. Because I think in Christianity, the idea is that completion will come in the end times. And I think Islam says, no, the message is complete before the end times happen. And I just kind of love this idea that, like, the message is complete, and now we're just kind of like waiting for the end times. Like, okay, it's complete. The mission of the prophets is complete. Humanity finally has absolute knowledge. It has an absolute understanding of its role. And I like that idea, like, we already know. And that has influenced kind of like my Marxism a lot. Like, we already live in socialism. Like, it's already here. It's already complete. All we have to do is shed our arrogance, shed our conceit, and submit to what is already here. In Islam, the word is submission. But what are you submitting to? You're submitting to something that's already been completed, that's already here, that's already present. And that's why I'm a Muslim. Like, and it also informs in a lot of ways my understanding of Marxism. To me, Christianity is not complete. It's not, submit to what's already here. It's more kind of like, okay, wait for the presence to come, to return, Jesus' return. That's when it will come. And I understand in Protestantism, there's this kind of attempt to make that more immediate through the Word, through the Bible itself, without any mediation through any bigger authority. And it's like there's an attempt, and it kind of seems like it's similar to Islam there. And I guess there's room to explore. Finally, when it comes to Orthodox Christianity, and you ask me, why am I a Muslim and not an Orthodox Christian? I think the question becomes a little bit more complicated for me. Because I feel a great affinity toward Orthodox Christianity on a spiritual and an emotional level, actually. Not just like a philosophical, like actually an emotional level as well. I kind of schizophrenically believe that both Russian Orthodox Christianity specifically, but I guess broadly Orthodox Christianity, which I don't know. I always think about it like how in Hagia Sophia, like the wall is a little bit covered up, but it's not all covered up. And there's like an icon of like Jesus or Justinian that's there, but it's like partially covered up. And I feel like that partial, that kind, I don't know if that would be called a liminal space of some kind between Islam and Christianity, where both of them meet. It's impossible for them to be totally reconciled, but like one represents this absolute division that brings us to the past, and then the other represents this kind of like absolute authority of the future, the message that we just submit to here and now in the present. And I like, I don't know if I'm using the word correctly, the liminal space in between both of those is kind of where I am, I guess. So that's kind of my take on it. I am not against Christianity. I'm not against Judaism either, and I don't claim to know it all or have all the answers. But that's just my perspective. Could be wrong. Could be totally full of it. Whatever. It's everyone's job to. It's very personal. It's everyone's job to kind of figure it out for themselves. But I don't agree with. The only religion that I'll use as a stick to bludgeon people with is Marxism. Put it that way. Like, I'm not going to have an Islam stick. I'm not going to have a Christianity stick. I'll have a Marxism stick, As long as you can obey a proletarian dictatorship, I don't care what religion you have. Have whatever it's up to you. It's up to your conscience, right? But first of all, we need to establish the worldly authority of a proletarian dictatorship. We need to establish a worldly authority of a new type of state which does respond, which is responsive to the absolute of that is humanity, you know? A state that contains the most noble and lofty ideals of mankind, that represents a broad and sweeping vision of the future. That needs to be built, established, and enshrined, and all need to submit to it. I don't know if that's, maybe we come full circle. I don't know, but I do believe in beating people with the stick of Marxism, specifically the writers of Game of Thrones, James Lindsay, other kinds of anti-communists. When I see people bickering over religion on the internet, I kind of think that they are mentally handicapped. I don't consider that something worth bickering over. Like, you either believe it or you don't. I don't know what to tell you. Some guy tweeting at you or insulting you, it's not going to affect religious belief in any kind of meaningful way. So that's my take. I also really like the perennial. One last thing. One of the reasons I also prefer being Muslim over Christian is because I think that because Islam claims to be the last religion and the completion of all of the messages bequeathed to mankind by the divine, and the final completion of the absolute message, the absolute meaning bestowed to humanity on earth, that also gives it a kind of dynamism in terms of the perennial outlook. It's extreme. Islam is extremely dynamic. When you look at it historically, all these Sufi orders or whatever, like, extremely flexible and dynamic when it comes to leveling with other religions, like Sufi saints in the Indian subcontinent, literally mastering the Hindu religion, translating it over into the language of Islam, and like converting people through that way. And I feel like Islam has this like radical perennial outlook, which finds something sacred in everything. There's a sacredness in all things, in everything. There's a sacredness in all religions, that it appreciates. And that very much also resonates with me as well. So, yeah. That's pretty much it, though.